Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reality Recap. I am your host, Queen E, and today I wanted to give my last impressions on season 9 of Love is Blind and maybe dive into a few of the themes that we saw throughout the season, maybe like pick them apart a little bit further. So before I get into it, please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Reality Recap Pod. And you can listen on all podcast platforms, including Apple subscriptions, where you can listen ad-free. So, I don't really have like a set list of points I want to touch on. So if I miss anything, definitely make sure to hit me up in the comments below to say like, hey, I also wanted to talk about this theme regarding this person. Like, let's really chat it up today. But I'm going to start with Megan and Jordan. So starting with Megan, one thing that really irritated me about Megan, even from the pods, was the fact that she was really honing in on the fact that her and Jordan don't make sense. But because she has this desire to be a mother, which isn't inherently a problem, and also this desire to get married and she feels like this connection is a way of bridging a gap between her and her father, she threw caution to the wind and proceeded with Jordan, knowing that it wasn't a fit. Now, I'll be honest, right? She did have a few other options. She did have Blake. She did have Mike. Mike didn't turn out to be a good fit in terms of maybe personality. I think that on the reunion, they did talk about the fact that she went on a few dates with Mike, but it didn't really amount to much of anything. And then with Blake, she does think that Blake is, a great person, but unfortunately, Blake did ghost her. I think she said she met up with him for drinks, but like they didn't date properly or anything like that. So really and truly, because of the emotional connection that she did form with Jordan, he was the best bet on that front. But when it comes to compatibility, he was not the person for her. And so what I wanted to talk about with her was the fact that oftentimes we know that something isn't good for us, but we want to do it anyways because of these images we've put in our mind about what our life is supposed to look like, right? So of course we know that she wanted to get married, she wanted to be a mother, and she said that, I do believe that I'm like called to this, right? I feel like this is a sign from my father. And even when Jordan met her at the reveal, he was like, oh, we need you. And it seemed like she really took pride in being needed by them. But she constantly spoke about the financial disparities, how his lifestyle wouldn't be aligned with her, even the fact that he wasn't as clean cut as she expected. Like that was, those are all things that she was concerned about, right? And it's interesting because people go on Love is Blind and they're like, oh, I want to try something different. I think you can only try something different to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not all of a sudden going to be into somebody who is a smoker or who is an atheist or who, I don't know, doesn't value mental health or something. I literally studied psychology. Like, how would that make sense? Or doesn't value education or things like that, right? So I think fundamentally, there are things that you should be able to stand on and to say, yes, although I might be trying to deter myself from my typical type aesthetically, at the core, I do still need somebody who's able to fall in line with what I want to do, right? Now, does he need to follow everything? No. So does he have to want to do the 5-star restaurants all the time? No, but maybe have the same or similar thoughts on money. It seems like even the way that they valued money was so different, and then that presented itself in very big ways regarding like the car that she drove and the house that she had and the trips that she wanted to take, and how he was not interested in any of that. I also think that when your gut tells you something, follow it, right? I think of Jeannie Mai from years ago when they had the show The Real, right? And on The Real, when she broke up with her first husband, she said that on the wedding day, and likely before, she already knew this is not something that she should move forward with. She knew from then this is not going to work. But I guess because of keeping up appearances, because you've been together for so long already, because you feel like you don't want to waste the investment that you've put in, she decided to go through with it, right? And so 10 years later, they ended up getting a divorce, even though she knew from the beginning it wasn't going to work out. Unfortunately, one thing that they did not agree on was something fundamental, like having kids. In that relationship, she felt like, well, I won't say in the relationship. In general, she felt like she did not want to have kids. However, her ex-husband wanted to have kids. And at the end of their relationship, there was a crossover between her and her husband and her husband and his current partner, and they had a child, right? And so something that was such a fundamental thing for the both of them, it seemed like they overlooked for the sake of, keeping up appearances. But they knew that things were gonna end, right? She then got married to the next guy, Jeezy. She did end up having a kid with him. She felt like in that relationship, she was more safe with him, but unfortunately they ended up breaking up too. I actually don't really know if she felt like things weren't going to work at the beginning of that. I think in this one, she said that like he really challenged her, and she felt like, her type was always like a black man, and she always wanted her dark meat on the side or something. I don't know, some crazy stuff that she said. But even in finding her type, it seemed like they had fundamental differences that ultimately led to them breaking up. So when I look at Megan and a lot of people who date like that, do yourself a service and go where you want to be. If you want somebody who engages in those finer things in life with you, go there. If you want somebody who's more simplistic, go there. And maybe if he doesn't look like your typical type, I think those are things that you can work through to a certain degree. If they look like a tree monster to you, then let's not go there. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny that I always say tree monster because that actually does come from The Real, and I'm just talking about The Real right now. But anyways, I think, yeah, within reason. That's hard to navigate when you are on Love is Blind, because whoever you see in that hall is who you see in that hall. But yeah, follow your gut. And I wish that Megan did follow her gut, because at the end of it, the thing that ended their relationship is something that she already pointed out at the beginning. Then on to Jordan, right? I think Jordan could have been a bit more realistic about his own feelings about money. And it seemed like he was trying to be okay with the fact that Megan did live a more extravagant life than he did. But for the sake of, continuing this connection that they had, it seemed like to him, he didn't want to make it a bigger deal than it had to be. But that conversation where, what was it? Yeah, they were in a closet or something. And then he was saying, well, you can't just pay somebody to raise your kid. Like, at least I'm raising my kid. Or, once you have children, you can't just be living this fast life or whatever. You could tell he actually did harbor feelings about her relationship with money and how that shows up in their relationship. I don't think there's an issue with him living a humble life, I also do think that he could have been more honest in the pods about even things like how meek and modest his life is. It seemed like he didn't necessarily want to divulge that too much because it could scare somebody. But I would rather scare you in the beginning than I now fall for you, and now we have to look at each other like, oh, well, you didn't say that. Oh, well, you didn't say that. The whole point of Love is Blind for me, I think everything is blind, right? You can only go off of the words that somebody tells you, but the real test of who somebody is once you see them in real life and you see how they move day in and day out. It doesn't matter what they tell you. It doesn't matter if they even give you whatever their depiction of what their appearance is. You're still going into this blind, in my opinion, right? I still believe that everybody gets the shock of their life once they now have to navigate life with this person. And they're like, oh, well, you told me something that was not what I'm experiencing now. So I do feel a little bit blindsided here. But yeah, I do think that they had the best potential of the relationships that we saw on the season, but they could have been more honest with themselves and their feelings about what was going on regarding money and lifestyle and all of that. I also do understand why he said at the end of it he did regret introducing his son, just because you can see the overflowing love he has for his son Luca. So to have put his son in a situation where he could potentially get attached to somebody who's not going to be there in the long run, I can obviously see that he wouldn't want to put his son in that kind of predicament. But yeah, I think he followed his heart at that moment. I wonder if he would have said yes Do you guys think he would have said yes at the altar if Megan was going to follow through with it? I don't think he should have. I think they would have found themselves in a very financially strenuous situation. Like maybe she might even resent him for the fact that he wouldn't engage in the things that she wants to do, or maybe he would resent her for being a lot more frivolous with money than he is, because she is able to do so. She's in that position and he's just not there yet. But that's it on them. Moving on to Joe and Megan. I think for Joe doesn't realize how disengaged he can be sometimes, you know, just looking at him at the reunion and how he wasn't really understanding the impact he had on Madison, and he just took the relationship kind of as a joke. That could be how he copes with being uncomfortable. But even from the pods, Madison would say certain things and he's just like being so chill and nonchalant, and she's looking for more of an answer and more involvement from him. And he says that he had come out of a 5-year relationship, I think it was. So maybe he did just get comfortable, right? Actually, we know he got comfortable, because at the end of that, he claims he was ready to propose, or he was ready to get married, but then couldn't ship off the invitations, right? I think he just got used to the mundane stuff and wasn't really being an active participant in his relationship. I also don't think he was an active participant in this dating experiment. It's like he was just going with the flow, going with the vibes. And then when life hit him square in the face, he was shocked, right? He was absolutely shocked. I also think that he should have taken more responsibility for maybe, how do I say this? It's a tough one, because he claims he was physically attracted to Madison. I don't fully buy it. It seems Madison herself doesn't fully buy it. And if there was a part of him that wasn't there yet, let's take sex off the table. You know what I'm saying? I think sex for a lot of people, even though people do make it seem like, oh, it's just a physical act, like it doesn't really mean anything, it can bond people. And I feel like Madison became so much more hurt because they had a sexual relationship, right? I think she would have been hurt regardless, but that doesn't help the matter. So if you weren't sold on maybe her appearance or even your relationship at all, let's not engage in sex. You don't know the impact that that's going to have on somebody. But I think in general, Joe just doesn't think of his impact. I'm even thinking of his current relationship. I don't want to talk about it too much, because actually, no, I can. Because homegirl brought their relationship business onto the internet. So therefore, I'm going to talk about it. And it does relate to the show. Even seeing or hearing that he was still in some ways entertaining Casey while being with the new girl, Avery, that's another example of Joe not thinking about how his actions impact people, right? Even if Casey was throwing herself at him, there are things that Joe can do to make sure that that no longer happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it starts to happen, you go the other way. Why are you even in the same vicinity as her? You can be in the same building, but you don't have to be right next to her, knowing that she is still doing certain things that could jeopardize your relationship. But I'm not sure if Joe fully grasps how he has to be more present here, right? Because the more passive you are, the more dismissive you are, the more you're causing hurt to other people when it's so unnecessary. And you could also just be single. If you are completely single and you're like, listen, I'm just here to play the field or whatever, and you make that clear to whoever you are playing the field with, I think that that could definitely mitigate some hurt. But yeah, Joe, I don't know, child. And then, oh no, not me putting Joe and Megan. Who was Joe with? Madison. Madison, to me, I'll be so honest, I think she did the best she could with what she had. There were moments that people were really upset with her, especially in Mexico, when she was emotional with him not really being fully there after the couples mixer with him being intoxicated and stuff. But I will say this again, considering what people have gone through with certain contestants on Love is Blind, I understand the crash out. I do. I certainly do. I do think that maybe she could have been more realistic. It seemed like she was trying to be very optimistic, very fairy tale-y, like, no, everything's great, everything's perfect. And I did kind of understand Joe in that conversation they had in the kitchen, where he was like, you are kind of scaring me by not showing any signs of hesitation whatsoever. I think that in that moment, it looked like he was just trying to pick a fight. But when you dig deeper, I do think that Madison just saw this as a fairy tale. Even at the end of things, when she said the reason why things ended was because of Joe and Casey's connection, I'm thinking, then you completely missed the plot. There was one time just before they were supposed to meet her family. I think it was her family. Yeah. He looked so disinterested in anything she was saying. He did not want to give her affection. He didn't want to do anything. And I'm thinking, Madison, how are you not seeing this? You know, something is clearly off in your relationship, but because she wanted this so badly, it seemed like she was willing to overlook everything for the sake of, you know, getting the ring at the end of the day, which is sad, right? I do think that a lot more people have a bigger responsibility in relationships than they like to admit. They want to act like, what is that thing? External locus versus internal locus, right? Where you think everything is happening to you versus you are the reason why things are happening. I do think there is a balance, right? Some things were happening to her. Some other things she could have taken responsibility for, in the sense that she could point out certain behaviors that she wasn't okay with, or she could point out when things maybe didn't seem right in their relationship and what they could do to fix it, or if it was time to call it. It seemed like she was just on autopilot in this relationship and just letting things happen to her. And that's a dangerous place to be at in life. Next, let's talk about Patrick and Casey. Patrick, I mean, I've said it plenty of times. I would have loved to see them really dive into his relationship with his heritage and where he actually grew up and how that has impacted him in his adulthood. We did see that this is a complex that he still carries, right? So being somebody who was also criticized a lot for being a foreigner, being somebody dark skinned, being a Black person just in general, I did relate with a lot of the things that he said, right? I think the thing that was disheartening regarding Patrick was he also made it seem like things were always happening to him, right? And it's like, well, maybe dating hasn't really worked out because you're kind of projecting some of this insecurity of not being so self-assured about your heritage or yourself, your appearance and stuff. And then also overinflating your sense of self at the same time, because there were plenty of times in the pods where he would say things like, oh, I get told often that I'm like the hot girl who doesn't know she's hot, or, you know, I can get down with the cool kids or whatever. I'm this, I'm that. I'm really trying to like pump himself up and giving himself an inflated sense of self, when he could have just been honest and been like, listen, here are my pitfalls, take it or leave it, right? On a show like Love is Blind, especially because as the seasons go on, it's harder to tell who is here for genuine reasons and who is here just, you know, for a platform. I do understand people's hesitation to be real. Simply put, you want to present yourself in the best way so that you will get chosen, right? But unfortunately, if you misrepresent yourself, you now are susceptible to the person feeling like they have been hoodwinked, and you now not being with anybody at all because you misrepresented yourself. Or you're now responsible for like that difference, that shift once you actually meet somebody, because you presented yourself a certain way. I feel like it is your responsibility to depict yourself as accurately as possible, because you want the person to fall in love with you for who you are outside of those pods. So present yourself in the best way, but as accurately as possible, so that you're not both confused on what's the shift after the fact, right? I'm thinking of oh my gosh, there's one couple I cannot remember, but basically they felt like after they got married, it was a complete stranger. It might have been Ashley and Tyler. I think it was Ashley and Tyler who I'm thinking about. Ashley did come out and say that Tyler was not doing any of the things that he said that he was going to do in the pods. Granted, he never gave that he was going to be that doting husband to me. She felt like he definitely sold her a dream, but for her, she also did skate over a lot of things. But yeah, you do have a responsibility to depict yourself accurately, because now the person feels like they fell in love with somebody who isn't real. And now you're on the receiving end of somebody feeling hoodwinked, and you're just like, oh, why would you switch up on me? Whatever. That's on you. That's on you. Then we have Casey. the thing that I wanted to talk about Casey with is, why do people feel like they can come on the show and like we won't be able to see through the BS? You know what I'm saying? Casey did try to come off like, I'm that girl. And there were moments where she did like, we did get a peek behind the veil. She did say that there's often another like hot blonde on the horizon. So you can sense that there's a bit of insecurity there. And maybe she feels like she has to mask that by being overconfident. And that could be why she was extra flirty with the guys post the pause, like with Brendan, allegedly, and with Joe. Like maybe that's her way of covering up those insecurities that she has. We know she wants a relationship. I mean, she's damn near nurturing one relationship while trying to forge another relationship on the show and maybe go back to that guy. I don't know where things stand with that guy, but yeah. I guess she thought she could come on here, blindside the audience, get some kind of platform, and now be an influencer. Time and time again, it does not work. Even if you are able to successfully dupe the audience, it only lasts so long. There are certain people who will maybe go on a different show or will just continuously talk online, and the audience is like, well, wait a minute. You are not the person who we thought you were. And so, yeah, I'm really intrigued to know what Casey's whole thought process was. I know now people watching Casey on the reunion, they thought that she was very nasty, like very mean girl-ish. And she kind of did show that in the pods, but I think that she didn't expect that the tide would turn so negatively towards her. But yeah, cautionary tale, if you were going on the show, try to have the best of intentions. Everybody is going to have a little part of them that does want a bit of clout. That one is understood, right? Why go on a TV show if you're not even going to be recognized? What the hell is the point of that? But at the very least, come with the intention of getting married or the intention of having a serious relationship. At the very least, come with your ducks in a row. We don't want to hear that you have 17 baby mamas outside, or, you know, you've been money laundering for the last 50 years. Like we don't want those kinds of stories. It would be lovely to get a season that actually just doesn't have scandal, doesn't have ex-boyfriends waiting in the wings for you to come home, or all kinds of stuff. I think that's also why the luster of Love is Blind is just diminishing. The show is getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer because it doesn't feel genuine anymore. It feels like people are coming here for a come up. And sometimes it happens naturally. I'm thinking somebody like AD, feel how you feel about her. I don't think she gave to me clout chaser on the show. I think she really was sick over Clay. I think she genuinely wanted that man. And sure enough, her star just hit the roof when it comes to Love is Blind. Like, she's one of the few people who were actually able to hit 1 million. I think she hit 1 million after she got married. Yeah, because I don't think she was quite at 1 million before she got married, but like she's one of the big success stories from the more recent seasons who just came on the show for love, right? Unfortunately, her partner at that time, Clay, he didn't get the same acceptance because people could see through the BS. We knew he wasn't here for love. We knew he probably came for fame, you know? So yeah, cautionary tale, guys, don't do it. It does more harm than good. Oftentimes people will run you off the internet. Now you look like Boo Boo the Fool. I don't know if it's worth it, child. Then we have Nick and Annie. I was kind of hoping, hoping is a weird word. A part of me was wondering if they were going to address the whole sexuality thing. We do know that both Annie and Nick outraged the queer community when they talked about queerness being a fad. And so the fact that they did not address that at all, I'm just realizing they did not address that at all at the reunion. That's another issue I have with it. I'm sure that was distasteful to a lot of people who are allies or people who are in the community themselves. So yeah, that was interesting. I was wondering if they were going to address commentary around his sexuality because it was a topic on the show. I know some people feel like, oh, why do we have to assume whether it's this or that? It was a conversation piece on the show. So yeah, I was wondering if they were going to bring it up on the show. Also, because a lot of the castmates felt like he was being very calculated or performative, I wondered if like that had to do with it. Not to say that he is one way or another, but because people tend to perceive him a certain way, maybe he feels like he has to overcompensate. And unfortunately, that comes across as him being disingenuous, right? I know a lot of people did not like how he was acting when he brought Annie to his mountain house, because it felt very like, look at me, I am man, macho, macho. And that's just not you, Nick. You know, it just, your real life doesn't give that. So yeah, I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity. Can I say missed opportunity? No, because we're not entitled to know how he feels about that whole thing or what his sexuality is. We're not entitled to that. I just think it would have been an interesting talking point considering how people received him and Annie. I also do think that Nick maybe needs to work on meaning what he says and not just going with the feelings in the moment. It seemed like he would say a lot of the same things to a lot of people. I mean, in that first episode, a lot of the women were like, oh no, this one is a playboy. He's not serious. Get him out of here. Unfortunately, Kate and Annie did not catch the memo, but from the beginning, they already were not taking Nick seriously because something about him just didn't seem genuine, right? So yeah, maybe he needs to work on thinking before he speaks, really being more aware of what he's looking for, and if the person he's talking to is giving him what he's looking for, if he's ready to even be in something serious. Because if you're not ready, don't waste nobody's time. Don't waste anybody's time. But yeah, I think those are the things that Nick could work on. And then with Annie, I mean, you can see that there is a big shift from the Annie on the show to the Annie who came on the reunion. I don't know what happened. Maybe I'll have to keep up with Annie to see if she does like an interview and to talk about the journey that she's had, because she seemed like a different woman to me. Okay. But on the show, she definitely gave desperate for marriage, desperate for a relationship for one reason or another. I'm not quite sure, but that can lead you into dangerous territory. Okay. A lot of pick-me's, unfortunately, get scorned in these relationships because they'll do whatever it takes to get a partner. And then once the reality of that relationship sets in, you're dissatisfied because you're not being true to yourself. And now you're realizing, I'm in too deep. I can't even, get out of this. You feel like you can't get out of this because you're now in too deep, right? With Annie, I do think she would have been making a big mistake if she would have continued with Nick. But as she said on the reunion, if he wasn't so adamant on anything, she would have kept going. And now, hindsight being 2020, she does realize that she was forcing things. And I would like for her to unpack why she was forcing things. Like maybe similar to people raised in the church and stuff, you've been primed to believe that marriage is the ultimate goal. There is status that comes with being married. There's, oh my gosh, I didn't get to say what my news was in the last video. I'm getting married, y'all. Oh no. Not me edging the audience. Child. I meant to say in the last video that I'm getting married, okay? But some things that I had to dismantle growing up in the church was the fact that marriage is the pinnacle. This is the highest height you could ever reach. Once you get married, everything in life is perfect. Absolutely not. I've seen plenty of marriages go to shit because they probably didn't properly think if this was a compatible relationship to get into. They probably let their faith or their community blind them from the issues that were going on in their relationship. And after they got married, maybe they're not actively working on themselves, continuously trying to grow and develop and learn each other and like love each other through the different phases of life, because you're not going to be the same person as you were when you got married, right? I do think that that is an issue in a lot of like conservative spaces, in Christian spaces, maybe in people who still think very traditionally. And I think that Annie is one of those people. Yeah, I would love to see if that has changed for her. I would love to see if that is something that she did believe coming onto the show, that like marriage is the ultimate goal, because it definitely gave that, definitely did. Then lastly, let's talk about KB and Edmund. I'm going to start with Calibria. I think Calibra is like your textbook, I can fix him. Like, your textbook, I can fix him. He's got enough for me to work with. I'll just turn him into the man that I want him to be. Never do that. Never do that. That is a dangerous game to play, mainly because if that person don't want to change, they're not going to change. They are not going to change. Maybe life will change them, but again, that's life. That's not you. So going into something thinking that you could morph somebody into the person you want them to be is already starting on a bad foot. With KB, I think that maybe her past was making her, was causing her to make concessions with Edmund that she knew she shouldn't, right? So even the fact that you could tell she wants a man who is like more alpha, you know, provider, protector, all those things. But maybe in the past, she might have been like chastised for wanting that, or she might have had that and it didn't work out. So in the pause, she came in very accommodating. Oh no, I want to do the 50-50. You don't have to be, you know, super masculine or whatever. I can show up in this way and that way and this way and that way. But as the season went on, you could tell that she did want a guy who was more masculine or traditionally alpha and stuff. And unfortunately, Edmund just wasn't that for her. He didn't make her feel safe and he didn't make her feel soft. And she constantly had to be the stern person because that's the position that he kind of put her in, right? So I do think that she kind of needs to be more honest with her feelings and the fact that she wants to be soft. And she doesn't want to be the one to mother her partner. She wants to, you know, be that princess, get that soft life from her life partner. I also do think that she needs to clock out of work. Clock out of work, mamas. Okay? Because even at the reunion, at the end of it, yes, she was kind of giving Edmund the business, but it still felt like she was trying to like call to him a bit. And even at the end, oh, come give me a hug. And I'm thinking, okay. I mean, you're saying that this man did hurt you, but it seems like you're dismissing your feelings in order to make him feel better. I think that that is her work persona coming up. I think she said she's a travel social worker. I think that's a part of that, right? And I don't think there's an issue with applying the principles that you've learned into your relationship. I mean, I studied psychology. I apply a lot of that into my relationship. But one thing I am not is my partner's therapist. I tell him all the time, we're going to go into therapy. You going to have a therapist, I'm going to have a therapist, and we going to have a therapist. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is not my job. However, I can use some of those principles in our relationship. With KB, it seemed like this was her job. It seemed like she was clocking in to work, right? And unfortunately, that story that Edmund came with did really pull on her heartstrings a lot. And so maybe a part of her felt like she didn't want to be yet another person to let him down. Who knows, right? She didn't want to add to the hurt and pain he's already experienced. I mean, hell, his mom didn't even show up at the wedding. I didn't see too many of his friends there, if any at all, right? So to be yet another person to hurt him, feeling so soft towards him, I can understand her not wanting to be that, but you also got to put yourself first. And I feel like a lot more harm was caused because she looked over a lot of behavior. I also did not like the fact that she didn't call him out on the things that he would weaponize earlier. I think eventually she did, which is good. But from that first time where he was crying over not getting the cooch, sweetie, you need to tell him that will never happen again. You will never guilt trip me in order to get your way. That is no way to have a relationship. Absolutely not. Especially if what you're crying for is sex. Hell no. Hell no. So yeah, with KB, I will also be looking out for other interviews. I know she did do one with AD, but that was like weeks ago now. And that was before we even saw the whole season. So I want to see post-season, post-reunion thoughts, right? And then lastly, with Edmund. Edmund is a touchy one, right? Because obviously from the onset, we could tell, okay, something here is a bit different with him. I'm not sure if it's a diagnosis. I'm not sure if it's, you know, whatever, right? So in general, we wanted to handle him with care, hold him with little kid gloves. But I also think that is a bit dangerous, right? So it's not only that people wanted to be careful because um, maybe there was a diagnosis there that we should be aware of, but we just didn't know about, but it easily transitioned into infantilization. And I think it's kind of scary when you infantilize somebody to the point that Edmund was infantilized, because it allows his pitfalls to be overlooked. His dismissiveness was very clear on the show. Him using very definitive language was clear on the show, right? And so to make it seem like somebody is always doing something to you, it does feel like you're a perpetual victim, right? And there's no way you are always being done wrong. Like, you have a part to play as well, but he never really had to cop up to that because of the infantilization, right? And then the weaponizing of tears. Yes, he doesn't see it as manipulative, but it absolutely is a manipulative tactic, right? And so if people are constantly coddling him, if people are constantly, making excuses for him, not only does it feel dismissive to the person who's in a relationship with them, it also doesn't allow the person to grow. I don't know if Edmund even grew from this process because he was never challenged, right? Well, he was challenged, but he wasn't challenged enough for me, and not in a constructive way. At the time that KB was ready to challenge him, she was at her wit's end. So unfortunately, at that point, she's talking to a brick wall. He's not going to receive what she's saying because the feelings are heightened, and you know what I'm saying? Nobody's in a point to listen, right? But how is Edmund going to grow if people immediately back off the moment he gets emotional? If people immediately make excuses because, oh, but guys, he has a lot of trauma. A lot of people do have trauma. I'll be so honest with you. A lot of people do. For me, trigger warning. Sometimes I forget to give a trigger warning because to me, it's not like triggering, at least anymore. I was molested when I was 14 years old, right? And for the longest time, I had a hard relationship with like men, whether it's romantically or otherwise. It didn't matter. You could be an elder figure in the church, or a relative, or somebody who's actually trying to date me. I did not trust men, right? And so if I was now with my partner, right, and I did not resolve those feelings, I personally don't believe it is right for me to now project that distrust of men onto him, because he ain't got nothing to do with that, right? It would be understandable if he's like, you know what, I do understand your past and I'm going to have grace with you. But ultimately, that work for me to unpack those feelings, to resolve that resentment towards men in general because of what one man did to me, that's on me, right? And yeah, I do think it's on Edmund to sort out some of those feelings that he has, and people should be okay with challenging him sometimes. And yeah, when you challenge somebody, they're not always going to be receptive to what you're saying. Sometimes they're going to feel like you're attacking them. That's real. Even if you're not being combative at all, some people do not like any form of accountability, any form of introspection, any of that. So they might, give you a tough time back. But I think for that person's development, it's worth doing. I even remember there was one point in the season where KB asked him, well, how did you resolve your feelings with your mom? Because for me, I hold a lot of ill feelings for my dad because it's like I'm mourning somebody who's not even dead. Like, he's just not active. And Edmund's thing was like, well, I love her. She's my mom. I think that's one of the things that he does. Like, instead of facing those hard feelings, he's just like, oh, well, that's life. It is what it is. I've been through hard stuff. Like, let's just, move on. But that also could lead to why he had such emotional outbursts, because he hasn't taken the time to actually address those tough feelings, those big feelings, right? And it's funny too, because some people were asking why I didn't talk about the whole like bead situation with his mom. Honestly, at the time, it didn't even register to me what was happening. But for people who don't know, in African culture, beads are like very, well, in certain cultures, let me not say African cultures. In certain cultures in Africa, beads can be tied to spirituality, right? And so the fact that the mom wanted to give beads and have KB put them on her, it definitely felt like a spiritual tie situation. So that was quite interesting. I do think even in that interaction with the mom and KB and Edmund, you could see that there's still things there that KB is excusing in his mom. And it could be because of like, I don't know if guilt is the word, but she wasn't properly around in his childhood. And so to keep from maybe losing her again, he just dismisses some of that, iffy behavior. It seems like the spouses of his other siblings are not with that at all, which is why she was complaining to KB saying, oh, my daughter-in-laws, they always rat me out to my sons, but you look like you're going to be a good one. You don't do that. She's already starting that manipulation with KB, which is crazy. It would be great for Edmund, to watch this back and to see how her behavior shows up even with other people, so that maybe he can look within his own relationship and say, oh my gosh, there's a real issue here. And at some point, we're going to have to address this. She might not be receptive, but I think this could be a big key in him, resolving maybe some of that unrest that's within him because of the upbringing that he has, because clearly it still affects him so much. We saw how much it impacted him throughout the season. But yeah, his infantilization, whether it's from the audience, whether it's from KB, whether it's from whoever is in his life, is definitely doing more harm than good for him. And I hope that one day, one day he's able to be a little bit more introspective and find a way to sort out whatever he could be dealing with internally. This is all me imposing my feelings on these people. I'm not even saying these are their real issues. I'm saying based on the show, this is what I perceived, and this is what I feel, should be worked on moving forward. But anyways, that's my last impressions on this cast. I did appreciate some of the conversations that came out of this, honestly. I think that season 8 was a wasted season. I don't even think I ever did a last impressions for that. And I love doing a last impressions video, not for that season. But season 9, as much of a dumpster fire as it was, I do think we had some really good conversation pieces. And that's one thing about Love is Blind that keeps me coming back. They talk about relationships, or they point to issues in relationships that are so real for a lot of people, and maybe a lot of people don't even want to address those things. So the fact that you see it on TV, it's cool. That's why I love Married at First Sight as well. They touch on a lot of things that people in relationships and marriages don't want to talk about. So yeah, that's interesting. I think they're already filming for future seasons. They have the next 4 cities already squared away. I need them to go to somewhere more fun. I don't know. Go back to Houston or something. No, did they go to Houston? Or am I thinking Atlanta? They went to Atlanta season 1. I don't know. Go back to a fun city. Let's do New York or something. Let's go to LA. Actually, no. If I'm complaining about fake, no offense to LA people, but y'all know the reputation of Los Angeles. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, give me something. If you're not going to give me fruitful relationships, give me interesting characters that we can really buy into. Give me storylines that, will keep us hooked for the season, right? And stop wasting our time in those damn pods, okay? They were showing us some worthless conversations. I actually wish we did get to see more of Allie and Anton. Did I talk about Allie and Anton? I didn't. Oh. Anton, I think, needs to be more real about his drinking. But like I said in the reunion review, I do think that there has been a change. He just maybe didn't address it on the show. And then with Allie, I think similar to some of the other people on the show, wanted a relationship so bad that she overlooked a lot of serious things and then was confused why she was walking down the aisle to a stranger. I think that there's a lot more responsibility that she could have taken that she didn't. Actually, no. Can I say that she didn't? Because at the reunion, she did say that they should have had deeper conversations. So I will say that she did acknowledge that. So that is good. But yeah, that's how I feel about those two. Anyways, let's go to a fun place. Let's do fun stuff. That's all from me, y'all. My throat is getting dry. So I'm going to end it here. As always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.